painting on the wall behind me, it depicts an 1847, roughly circa 1847 town ball game. There are 3 panels that have the same background. Panel number 1, to my far right, shows the 2 teams marching in to play the game. Panel number 2 shows the game in progress, and panel number 3 shows the post-game picnic. That post-game picnic is the more important event of the day. That's where the ladies and children can also join in, and it's kind of the excuse for having the ball game. Now, the flags on the buildings in the panels kind of indicate that this was probably a holiday of some sort, say a July 4th holiday or something. We're not quite sure. The artist didn't make that clear to us. By the way, this is done by a local folklore artist named Charles Monroe, who did it specifically for this wall here. But these 2 teams are marching in to play a game. This might be an act of social rebellion. Remember, this is in a time period where grown men worked 6 days a week and worshiped on the Sabbath. You did not play baseball on the Sabbath. The blue laws preventing the playing of ball games on the Sabbath, which is something that lasted up into the 1970s. So it's only recently that the blue laws have started to disappear within my lifetime. So you've got these 2 teams marching in to play the game, and then they walk over to the field, and that kind of looks like a ball game, doesn't it? There's a ball, a bat, there's some sticks, there's guys out in the field, but it's not baseball as we know it. The game itself is played differently in that the pitcher, who is the red dandy there between second and third stake, he is throwing the ball to the batter in an effort to give him something to hit. Now, as we mentioned upstairs, every team, every club had their own set of rules. So you would have had 2 clubs here with different sets of rules, coming up with some sort of compromise. The game they're playing here might not have had a strikeout rule, might not have even had a strike rule. So nothing happens until the ball touches the bat. Once the ball touches the bat, it's in play. There is no foul territory. Foul territory had not been invented yet. So what you would today call a foul tip is a ball in play. That's why the catcher is playing so far back. That's why you have some of those funny rules today about third strikes being dropped by the catcher or foul tips and things like that. That all dates back to a time from before there was the whole concept of a foul ball. So you hit the ball, and no matter where you hit it, it's in play, therefore you have to run. Now, there are 2 ways of being put out in this game. The first is to hit the ball in the air and to have it caught in the air. There would be some teams where the rules were if it was 1 bounce, you were out. But let's assume in this game it was just if it was in the air, you were out. The second way is to be plugged. To be plugged means that a fielder who has the ball will throw it at you and try to hit you with it, and as long as you are not touching a stake, you are out. And yes, the ball hurt, and yes, they threw it for maximum hurting as much as they could. So you've hit the ball, and in order to, they didn't call it scoring a run, they called it earning a tally. In order to earn your tally, you would have to eventually, before the end of the game, touch first, second, third, fourth stake in that order. You would then run over to the table underneath the porch on the little blue house and ring a bell. The umpire, who is the fellow with the top hat standing between first and second stake, would hear the bell ring. He would then pull his stick out of his back pocket, and with a penknife, he would score the stick. That's where scoring a run comes from. That's where score keeping comes from. Literally the act of scoring a stick with a penknife. Now, let's say you're the batter and you hit a ground ball over toward first stake where the fellow playing by first stake picks it up. And you think to yourself, oh, this is going to hurt. He is going to plug me. So what do you do to avoid being plugged? Run to fourth stake. Run down the street and hide behind the red barn. There are no base paths. They hadn't been invented yet. You can run anywhere you want in order to avoid being put out. So let's say you run and hide behind the red barn. They might say, well, we're not going to chase you anymore. Come back, and they'd start the game up again while you're hiding behind the red barn. So you try to then sneak back onto the field, and you can go touch any stake you want as long as it's not occupied by another player. But eventually you want to run over and touch first, second, third, fourth in order to come in and earn your tally. So all of the rules that you think of today that control the game didn't exist. So there were actually some guys on teams who were called rabbits. And their job was to hit the ball and then run down the street to see if they could get people to chase them so other runners could run the stakes and earn their tallies. It was a completely different game. it evolved into the game that we know as baseball today. Now, you might know there's, I guess 9 people on a team. There might have been rule changes, per game where they allowed 11 or whatnot. But depending upon the rules, there might not have been a batting order rule. You could send the same 4 guys up over and over and over again, and the other guys didn't have to get up at all. All depends upon the rules. All the rules you think of today did not exist back then. And then, of course, you move over to the post-game party. And I like to joke that there used to be a 4th panel that we didn't have room on, and that was for after all the beer drinking at the party, for the post-dinner brawl among the players. Which brings up the question of there's really nothing new under the sun. When was the first baseball riot? Anybody want to guess? We think of sports riots as a contemporary problem. Well, back during the War of 1812, American sailors were held prisoner in Dartmoor Prison in England. They were playing a stick and ball game in the prison encampment. One of the Americans hit the ball into the British encampment. The British would not give them their ball back. They went under the wall to get their ball back, not to escape, but to get their ball back. And in the ensuing fight and riot, several of the Americans were shot and killed by the British soldiers. How about the first complaint about luxury boxes? 1880s. There was a stadium built in Chicago with a luxury box up on top of the stadium, and the owner would hit a gong to bring the servants running, and the fans were complaining about the owner hitting the gong. So luxury box issues go back to the 1880s. There is really nothing new. The first article which complains about baseball players being spoiled and getting paid too much money, 1870 something, and in every decade since. The only thing that changes is the name of the player and the amount of money. And I guarantee you, in 30 years, somebody will write an article that says the ball players of 2050 are just not as good as the ball players of 2015, and they're spoiled and they make too much money, because back in 2015 those are real ball players. That's just, it's a repetitive nature of history, and you're going to see that all along the way. So we get to the end of the day, we've got our post-game party going on over here, and the day is over. But again, keep in mind, these guys might have been, protesting a bit by playing this children's game and having a lot of fun doing it.
Could the fans interact with the ball?
Oh yeah, there might be goats walking through the field. I mean, again, there's nothing within that. So this then brings up the question of, why are you here in Cooperstown today? Because this is the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame is here. Why?
Because Abner Doubleday invented baseball here.
That's what the story was in 1939. Abner Doubleday had invented baseball in Cooperstown in 1839. The only problem with that story is it's not true. It never happened. But baseball was also not invented in Hoboken, New Jersey. It was not invented in Westfield, Massachusetts, or anywhere else. When you say baseball was invented, what do you mean baseball was invented? Which baseball? The American League or the National League? 2 different sets of rules. If one of them is baseball, the other one can't be. How about college baseball with aluminum bats and different roster rules? How about Little League baseball with 60-foot base paths? How about women's fast-pitch softball? Balls, bats, gloves, runs, scorekeeping, triples, doubles, home runs. How about men's slow-pitch softball with a keg of beer at second base, which is closer to this game than any of the other ones I've mentioned? Any of you guys ever play street ball in Brooklyn? I know one of you have. Anybody play wiffle ball in the backyard?
Yeah.
All right, you've played a stick and ball game. So what has happened is that back in the colonial days of America, in the early days of the American states, there were multiple stick and ball games being played all over the place. Over time, they have evolved into multiple stick and ball games still being played all over the United States. There is no one game of baseball to have been invented. There are multiple games of baseball, multiple variations of stick and ball games that are still in existence. There is no one magical moment when all of a sudden there is baseball. There are some important dates of rule changes and teams being created and leagues being formed and things like that. But even today, the rules being played by this year are different than the rules being played 2 years ago. The sliding rules have changed, second base and home plate. The game continues to evolve. The evolution has never stopped. So keep that in mind. This is kind of where it started, but there wasn't a magic moment. It's kind of evolution versus creationism. And in this case, evolution is certainly the story. And that's where we are today. And what we try to do here at this library is to save that complete history of the game. Questions?
Very cool.
You guys are ready for a PhD now in baseball
That's
history.
true.